Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dawn Southard. I'm Vice President, Investor Relations with Team Neo. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. As we're connecting virtually today, it's fitting that we're talking about 5G and the benefits it will bring to businesses throughout our Northeast Ohio region. We've assembled a timely and great program that includes a presentation about what we all need to know about 5G and also a panel discussion with industry experts that are going to help us understand its value. We encourage you to post your questions throughout the conversation, and we will address as many questions as possible at the end of the presentation. And with that, I'd like to turn this over to our Team Neo's CEO, Bill Koehler. Bill?
Thank you, Dawn, and I think now good afternoon to everyone. I'd like to especially thank our panelists from Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile, and Spectrum for sharing your perspectives and your time today. We look forward to your insights about 5G and the impacts that it can make in our community. Technology is definitely changing our world. At Team Neo, we are focused on technology adoption as a means to advance our region. Technology infrastructure is a critical component of our competitiveness strategies as it relates to site development. So to this end, we're doing a number of things, including forming innovation clusters to connect companies, solution providers, academia, and others with opportunities to collaborate and take advantage of these new technologies that build on the industrial and workforce strengths of our region. Our aim is to help address both the benefits and the risks. In order to do that, we need to understand it at a very detailed level, including time to implement and the costs associated with that implementation that companies face as we adopt this new technology. Our work in this area can help ensure companies improve their overall quality of what they do, their overall competitiveness, and at the end of the day, their growth, profitability, and overall prosperity. 5G will enhance these efforts, giving businesses access to lightning fast data. Milliseconds matter in this space for sure. The transfer speeds and improved network reliability and all those other things which allow businesses to implement targeted real-time services. 5G will especially be useful for the 7,700 manufacturing facilities in Northeast Ohio that rely on more and better data about their operation to improve their overall efficiency, effectiveness, and maybe even new value propositions associated with the work that they do in those facilities. So in order to keep moving, I'm going to turn the program over to my colleague, Neil Singh, who is Team Neo's Director of Technology. He engages with companies to help them explore various growth opportunities with emerging technologies and technology adoption opportunities that impact IT, operational technology, sides of organizations in many industries. He helps them understand available opportunities, resources, talents, and networking opportunities in the regions that can help companies continue to go down this journey and ultimately thrive. And so he's going to also share today a baseline perspective of 5G and its potential applications in the business community as a way to set the baseline for the upcoming panel. So Neil, let me yield the floor to you.
Thank you, Bill. 5G is defined as a new wireless communications standard. The infrastructure for 5G is being implemented by several telecommunications companies across the globe to help consumers and businesses experience benefits from emerging technologies. 5G provides significantly faster communication speeds with much more capacity to enable data-intensive and more engaging technology applications and devices. Not only is 5G faster, but it's also a more secure and highly scalable network. 5G inspires industry transformation by allowing smart and IoT technologies to be used in several different applications as shown in the diagram. one of the most common questions I get asked is, how do these technologies apply in the real world use cases and different sectors? 5G can be applied in connected factories, in manufacturing using sensors, edge computing, devices, and augmented reality, enabling workers to train staff, control production, conduct machine maintenance, and achieve operational efficiency. In healthcare, the delivery of remote healthcare via telemedicine services such as remote monitoring is another example where the greater communication speeds of 5G offers and makes a difference by allowing more immediate care for patients from their healthcare service providers. Some of the other sectors such as retail, banking, and finance benefit directly from 5G thanks to faster transaction processing. Logistics and supply chain companies can successfully track the export, import, and delivery of products in real time and can use drones to enhance accessibility and delivery in hard-to-reach locations using 5G communication. In agriculture, farmers can use sensors to monitor crop yield, water conservation, and autonomous farm machinery. Finally, autonomous cars that use advanced processing to enable LiDAR, which will change how we commute in the next decade, are also one use case of 5G. Autonomous vehicles simply were not possible given the limitations of 4G communication, but 5G has the network capacity to quickly process large amounts of data and send this information to smart vehicles, which use technologies such as AI and computer vision to understand the environment and move the vehicle safely within it. All these examples require significant amounts of data to be securely transmitted to applications where 5G technology makes a big difference. What I have discussed today about 5G and the emerging technologies it enables is only a small sample of use cases for many different sectors and types of businesses, many of which are relevant to Northeast Ohio. If you operate a business or know of a business who would like to learn more about 5G and its benefits, please share their information with us. As you can see on the slide, these are the details that I would love to hear about companies that are interested in the topic. I would now like to welcome Team NEO Senior Vice President, Jay Foran, who will be moderating our panel of experts who are here to answer your questions about 5G. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Neil. Good afternoon, everyone. Pleasure to be with you. As Neil indicated, I lead our industry and innovation team. And industry and innovation is purposely chosen as my title because we at Team NEO, along with our partners across the region and within Jobs Ohio, focus on 10 different business sectors that we believe are instrumental and contribute to driving growth in our economy. This 5G technology is of great interest to us in how it can impact the business community. And this panel is really about the so what of 5G. We've heard so much about it over the recent years, but so what? What's it going to mean to the business community? And we're very fortunate to have 4 distinguished panelists from the leading companies that are in the 5G space. And I'm going to be asking them each to do a quick introduction. And why don't we just go down the line here? We do want to get into questions as soon as possible, but Stephen Evanoff from AT&T, if you could do a brief introduction. We'll follow with Bryan, David, and Sanjay.
Sure. I'm Stephen Evanoff. I am with AT&T as a network sales support manager. I've been with the company for 25 years, and I support all of Ohio, parts of West Virginia.
Thanks, Stephen. Bryan?
Yeah, I'm Bryan Hagedon. I lead the wireless innovation team here at Charter, externally known as Spectrum. And what we're doing is evaluating and demonstrating all the benefits of wireless technologies on top of our wired backbone. And that includes 5G, of course, in addition to other wireless technologies. David?
Thanks, Bryan. Good to have you with us. David?
Yeah, my name's David Rivera, based out of the Central Coast of California. I'm the IoT Business Development Director for T-Mobile. What that is I focus on smart cities, smart buildings, and what we'd like to call ag tech, so agricultural solutions, really looking at everything from sensors to monitoring livestock and everything like that.
Thank you, David. And Sanjay, bat and cleanup.
Good afternoon, everyone. Sanjay Udani here. I'm based in Washington, D.C., and I work in Verizon's policy office. I'm an engineer by profession. I was one of the architects for Fios broadband network, and now I'm involved in all sorts of policy issues for 5G, cybersecurity, spectrum, you name it.
Terrific. Thank you, gentlemen. Thanks for each of you. Thanks to each of you for being with us today. And, you know, new technologies, emerging technologies like these are always fun, exciting to hear about. They come with a lot of advertisement as they approach the market for implementation. But it's been my experience that business evaluates new technology from the lens of what I call time, risk, and money. So for instance, from a time standpoint, how complex is it to integrate? Or maybe how much internal capacity is required to make it happen and successful. From a risk standpoint, it could be, what are the business threats if it fails to deliver? Or if I fail to adopt it, what do I lose? And lastly, from a money standpoint, always important to companies and businesses, will adopting it help me make more money, either by saving me money or helping me with new business opportunities? So I thought it might be great if we could ask each of you to kind of give your perspective, what your view is of 5G and its ability to deliver on this business lens of time, risk, and money. David, how about if I ask you to go first?
Yeah, no problem. When I look at 5G, I really look at, especially within agriculture, really we're looking at saving money. And what we're doing is being able to put sensors and solutions out in the field to monitor any kind of machinery or any kind of asset, or even down to the crop row. So what we're really looking to do with 5G is kind of expand our view on the farms and ranches and kind of get more out of what we're investing in our farms. And so when we're looking at the cost savings, we're seeing that because we're being able to save on irrigation, feed, veterinary services, things like that. And then the infrastructure is minimal when putting in anything for 5G, because we're really looking at sensors and gateways all throughout the farms. Instead of having to have your mechanic drive out to fix your tractor, we can help them and guide them and show them how to do everything from a portal or a video right in front of them. So there's a lot of cost savings that 5G is going to provide for us as we get more insight into our everyday view of the farms and farming.
Great. Thank you. Stephen, what's your perspective on these aspects of time, risk, and money?
Yeah, definitely on the risk and the money side. The money savings from deploying a 5G network and 5G infrastructure. You have less cabling when you're in a manufacturing setting where you're not having to install a bunch of Wi-Fi nodes. You can use a 5G infrastructure. So from a security standpoint, the data is a lot more secure if it's in a cloud-based network, or in our multi-access edge computing network, where you can control kind of what goes out into the cloud and what stays in your own network. And definitely the safety risks. You definitely want that lower that lower time to communicate between devices. It could, if you're talking about like the auto industry, you don't want that lag time when you're, communicating from either car to car or, throughout the network.
Great, perfect, thank you. Sanjay, your perspective on the same question, that would be valuable.
Sure. Yeah, I was thinking about that as you were discussing it, and I kind of see this, the analog is, if you think about when we were using dial-up as consumers, right? We all had one computer connected to dial-up, and that was pretty much your home network. And now the average consumer probably has 30 or 40 devices with Wi-Fi with, gigabit speed connection. I kind of see that as what's happening with businesses, where we are now going from businesses using networking for sort of basic connectivity, email, etc., to now this is going to be completely prevalent as sort of a fabric of the business. It's no longer just the network. And so to me, that's going to be the most interesting part about this whole transition. And, absolutely, I mean, what the previous panelists said, I mean, this is, the magnitude of the change is hard to fathom.
Thank you. Bryan?
Yeah, I think on the first time, it's good to step back and remember that, we lived in a world of pre-2G, 2G, 3G, 4G, and now 5G. And each of these generations of cellular technology lasted about a decade. And if you think about that decade, what transpired during that decade is users didn't know the benefits for at least the first third of the decade. And so it evolved over time. And I think what we've done is we've moved from voice-centric to data-centric to multimedia-centric. And now we're in this truly scalable period with 5G. And the benefits of 5G, I don't think, are even fathomed to maybe underline that point. If we think about, and somebody mentioned Wi-Fi, Wi-Fi's done a great job. It will continue to do a good job. In fact, we're moving to Wi-Fi 6 now, which has exceptional performance characteristics as well. But the difference is scale and reach. If you think about Wi-Fi's ability to cover an area, cellular can do a much better job. Now, there's a lot of variances here in terms of what airwaves you're transmitting your signal on. I don't want to get too wonky here, but if you think about an indoor deployment of 5G, you can cover a lot more area and number of endpoints with cellular and 5G than you could ever do with Wi-Fi. So the cost and management of that wireless network will be cheaper in a 5G world.
Thank you. So we've always thought of technology and technology adoption as critical to the competitiveness of our companies. What are the competitive threats here? And advantages, I guess, if you're incorporating 5G, that's going to help to what degree? And if you don't, what's that going to mean? And I'd open it up to anyone to respond.
I would sort of couch this on this is Sanjay. If you think about 4G and mobile networks, we, the US, were the leader in deploying them starting in 2010. And you saw the number of industries that was spun off based on just having a mobile broadband connection, right? Or whether you're talking about Uber or Lyft or mobile gaming or what have you, a lot of those companies are now based in the US. And something similar will happen with 5G. We don't know which particular industry is going to take off or come up as a new industry, but it will happen. And so to me, it's not a question of one particular company. It's as a country, this is the opportunity for us to lead again, just like we did with 4G, where you'll have all these new industries. And if we don't do that, it's going to happen elsewhere. It's not as if, this is not going to happen. It's going to happen in other countries. And then we'll be sort of playing catch up. So to me, that's the urgency of this.
Any other perspectives on it?
I just like when this is David, in the slides that Neil shared, there is like a pinwheel of kind of all the solutions that 5G is going to bring. Even just 3 years ago, when we would share like a pinwheel of a circle of all the solutions that are coming with 4G, if you look at 5G, we're just expanding like innovation. And like I like what Sanjay said, that as a country, our kids are getting smarter and they're finding ways ways to bring innovation to every sort of industry. And so that's what's really exciting, is going to see what comes from that. I mean, like I said, the things that were on the outside of the wheel when we were in 3G, 4G are now real things. We're having people do, urban farming using 5G. We're having things that are just, industry changing, and just really exciting about all the innovation that's going to come with 5G.
It sounds like it's an enabler to other technologies.
Yeah, I think that's important to remember a couple of things. One, the real benefits of 5G are for businesses, not for consumers. And to unlock the value for businesses, you need to add edge compute. And if you think about the benefits of a fiber fast network with mobility features and flexibility, you can now move compute power away from the endpoints and either to the edge or even into the cloud. So you can reduce costs to deliver these phenomenal services. I think David mentioned the agriculture example of working on a tractor. These tractors are multi-million dollar pieces of equipment. They're not insignificant. So the opportunities to be able to do a lot of things remotely is now being enabled. To your point, it is an enabler. And the network is not the only thing that matters here. There's so many simultaneous technology evolutions that are happening that are being enabled by the performance of the wireless network.
And I think I also heard that an outcome, which is always important with a technology, is innovation.
That's right.
Anything more to say on innovation and what the opportunities are there?
Well, one thing I would say is that from an innovation perspective, up to recently, if you were an app creator or a service provider of some sort, from a network perspective, you didn't really have much of a say. It was basically, okay, you've got this connection to the internet. What you get is what you get. With 5G, it is now, the network is able to adapt to whatever your service needs. Right, so Bryan, Dave, others mentioned about the MEC, the mobile edge compute. You can now ask the network and say, you know what, I need a low latency connection. I need the computation to be done at the edge. I need a higher speed. All these different things are knobs that an app writer can now adjust based on their need. And so that's the most interesting part from an innovation perspective. What will you come up with now that you've got all these additional features that you can play with?
Great. Sanjay, let's dive in a little bit, if we can, into the specific industry sectors which can benefit from the application of an implementation of 5G. Maybe you could talk a little bit as it applies to healthcare. Maybe provide us an example or two of the kind of use cases or types of advanced medical opportunities that 5G can enable.
Sure. And I'm going to talk about healthcare, but really this applies to almost anything, as you will see. So a couple of angles to this. One is just the basic connectivity and computation that you can do with 5G. The fact that it's now wireless means that the equipment can now be moved around in an operating room, operating theater, wherever you need it, as opposed to being tied to the floor. And of course, you have the capacity to do this. So some of the things we're doing by moving the computation to the edge are things like cancer detection using AI. All the processing happens in the hospital, in the location, so you get a much better performance. So that's your basic, improvement in performance. But the one that's really interesting to me is that we're now at the merging of augmented reality, virtual reality, where you have the hardware, the Oculus glasses, the Microsoft HoloLens, all of these things are now getting to the point where they're good enough that you can use them and it doesn't look kludgy anymore. And now we've got a network that can offer you the very low latency connectivity with high processing capability that will now remove some of the issues we saw in previous augmented reality solutions. And so with that, we're now talking about not just doing a video call with your doctor or a class of students, medical students, doing what we're doing right now, which is just having a webinar on video, but now they can actually be in in the room looking at a virtual patient and teaching things. So that's going to fundamentally change the way we do things in medicine. And, again, replace medicine with a factory floor. Same thing applies, or whether you're talking about education. So those are the two sort of big things that are coming down from our perspective.
Thanks, Sanjay. That's great. As we all know, healthcare is such an important part of our economy here in Northeast Ohio. We count on it for a lot of growth, and certainly 5G will be a propellant for our healthcare industry. Stephen, I think Sanjay was leading us into the conversation around manufacturing. We've got 7,700 manufacturing facilities in this region, many of them small and medium size. But we cross the spectrum of the variety of industries, from metals to chemicals to automotive, aerospace, et cetera. How should manufacturing be looking at 5G, and what's it going to mean to the variety of different industries here? What kind of use cases would you see taking place here?
So for an example, we have a large manufacturer of appliances that we're working with in Northern Ohio. And one of their problems is, so they have autonomous guided vehicles, or AGVs, and they're using a Wi-Fi system currently to communicate to these AGVs. And the problem they get is the Wi-Fi in a manufacturing setting gets jitter or roaming issues, signal interference or background noise. And the AGVs will pause or stop because they lose that connectivity or lose that signal. So we're working with this company to deploy a cellular network, both LTE and 5G, on the manufacturing floor, and convert the AGV over from a Wi-Fi connectivity to an AT&T cellular network, and also to install a MEC, or the mobile multi-access edge computer, to offload some of the AGV control data on premises and make that lag time slower. The benefit to the company is, they can do it with fewer nodes, which helps with the infrastructure cost. It helps with the reduced jitter and better reliability of the AGVs. And by employing the MEC, they can keep their data private and keep it kind of in-house as opposed to going out back to the servers.
Great.
So we can, and we're doing the same thing in the automobile industry, working with these manufacturers as well for like product control type issues, and being able to remotely do product control in an instant, as opposed to maybe having a person online. The person can now be the backup.
Okay, great. So you brought up cellular networks, and I know there's some thought about private cellular networks. And Bryan, what do you see the value here, and how do we make this all happen? What are the benefits?
Well, as we mentioned before, the scalability and the reach are certainly the benefits. I think it's important to understand that the spectrum bands that are being used for these services are going to be a bit different than what we're used to. The future of cellular is not going to be on towers, it's going to be on buildings and poles. We call them small cells. And if you think about indoor networks, a lot of these new spectrum bands that are going to be deployed for 5G won't penetrate double pane glass. So a lot of indoor networks are going to be built out, and already are. And those indoor networks can be built on a single customer basis, in other words, a private wireless network, which improves security and also keeps all the data in the building when you add a on-premise edge compute solution. So there's a number of verticals and use cases that are embracing this private wireless or private cellular approach. In fact, if you pay attention to the recent FCC spectrum auctions, a lot of end customers are out there buying their own airwaves to deploy their own private cellular networks, like universities and utility companies, because they see these benefits and they're taking it into their own hands.
Terrific, thank you. I would encourage our participants out there to enter questions in the Q&A area within this platform. We'd like to get to that in just a minute or two. Dawn Southard from Team NEO is going to lead the Q&A discussion and close things up. But David Rivera, you mentioned a lot of use cases for agriculture. Food processing here in Northeast Ohio in particular is strong. I'd like your perspective, your thoughts on food processing and how 5G can make an impact there.
Yeah, it's really amazing what 5G is going to give us insight into, and just a remote monitoring of the whole process from field to table, and being able to, go back and track and see exactly, what crops or what food is coming to the table and see exactly where it came from. Really what we're monitoring right now and what we're doing with 5G is working with universities and farmers, and we're really working on trying to get more out of less. And being able to track once everything's grown and moving off the farm back to restaurants or stores or anything like that, being able to get insight not only from the minute that we plant the seed all the way to when it's in the store and into onto your table. And so really monitoring everything about that. And so when one of the things that we had worked with was a protein company out of the Midwest, and we were able to track down every piece of meat and packaging that they put out into stores down to the pound, basically, as it came in. And so with 5G, we're going to start seeing more precise data and analytics around the products and the plants and everything that we're farming and working on, and getting it down, getting a precise view of everything that's being brought out from the farm. Just to give you like some an example of that, we're actually working with an oyster farm, and being able to give them the temperatures and the ambient quality, and giving insight into how the oysters are growing, and then into bags to once they're harvested and going to restaurants or stores, and we can give insight, and 5G is going to allow us to get that tracking and insight on all the data that's collected around farming and harvesting, and just really be able to help farmers make better decisions. And as it goes into processing, we're able to track everything, to the pound or to the yield or anything like that as it goes out. And so really if there's ever a recall or anything like that, we're going to be able to provide more data on, follow up and where situations lie. And so 5G is really going to just improve, farming as a whole. We're going to see innovation. We're seeing innovation now. We're going to continue to see it with telehealth services for veterinary services, and AR, VR, drones, AGVs. All of the things that we've been talking about are coming to the farm also. They're not just out in your urban areas. And so,
thank you.
Yeah, a lot of innovation coming.
Yeah, well, I think you've really hit on a really key benefit. Through COVID, this pandemic. We've learned the criticality of supply chain visibility, and you've given us a wonderful demonstration from seed to consumption, to how this could potentially benefit our society in addition to all the companies within. Okay, well, we've got a lot of our attendees that have posted questions. I'm now going to turn it over to Dawn Southard, our Vice President of Investor Relations, and she's going to lead this portion. So, gentlemen, thank you from me for your comments. They've been very valuable. Thank you. Dawn?
Yeah, thank you, Jay. And thank you to all of the panelists for sharing your opportunities for new innovation that 5G is going to allow us to explore, activate as we continue to evolve as a society. We've got a lot of questions. We'll try to get to as many as we can. I'm going to start with one. And Jay, if you want to help direct on who this goes to, but how do customers' costs justify 5G? And how's that going to help us develop the ROI?
Anyone can answer. Is it
Well,
going to be through cost
I'll
saving?
jump on it. I mean, I think it's important to understand that, you know, just taking it from a high level, digital transformation requires measurement. And, you know, you can't manage what you don't measure, and it's never been cheaper and easier to measure anything you need to in your business with the combination of these wireless networks and the lower cost of these endpoint devices sensors. So if you think about the investment and the return on that investment, this is your ability to get real-time insights, actionable information for transforming your business. The ROIs are well proven across every vertical you can imagine accordingly. So I don't think there's a simple answer to the question, how do I justify it? Well, maybe it is simple. You justify it with the business value that can be created from this.
Thank you. We just received a note from John Park, and his question is, the installation pace or availability of comprehensiveness of coverage seem important to harnessing 5G capabilities, but are there any federal or state incentives to encourage faster installation? That's the first part of his question. Does anyone want to answer that? Bryan, I'll pick on you.
Okay. Well, first of all, I think it's really important to understand the difference between a macro cellular network and a private cellular network. And if your business can justify your own private cellular network, deployment is completely based on your own needs. And standing up a handful of cellular radios on your campus or in your building is just like setting up a Wi-Fi access point network. If you're trying to leverage the macro networks that my cellular brethren are deploying across the country today, then you'll have to watch their rollout schedules, and they're very aggressive. And in fact, it's quite impressive how quickly they're doing it. But again, 5G won't be everywhere for quite some time. The prediction is, from a macro point of view, that only 50% of cellular devices will be on 5G by 2025. So we still have a few years to go for this rollout to be what we would call ubiquitous. So it's going to be on a region by region, case by case basis. And obviously they're building out the density of the cities first. But that does not preclude you from benefiting if your business can justify your own private cellular solution. Even if it's one radio, you could see these benefits.
Thank you, Bryan. I'm going to share another question here that came that Barrett Thomas posed, and it's a little bit in relation to what you just talked about, Bryan, but Barrett said he's heard that 5G comes in 3 different flavors: wide reach with speeds just a little faster than 4G, short reach with very fast speeds, and kind of a middle reach. What technology are companies planning to primarily use, and what's the rollout strategy? And what can we do to help find locations for equipment to get good coverage in our communities?
So I can take, yeah, I can take that. So I think what you're referring to is the different behavior of spectrum. So there's low band, mid band, and high band spectrum, and each one has different characteristics. Each covers sort of a bigger area or less area. What we have, and as do the other companies, we have nationwide coverage using the low band spectrum, which goes far. So that's using the traditional large cell towers that we see everywhere. Works great, great coverage. Capacity is not going to be as good as with some of the higher band spectrum. And on the high band spectrum, it's the opposite. The coverage, the distance that the signal goes is not as far, but we have a ton of spectrum. And what that means is that you can now get very high capacity, very high speeds. And just to give you an idea, we've got ultra wideband spectrum in the 28 gigahertz that's been deployed. Customers are seeing speeds in the 2 or 3 gigabits per second range on their mobile devices, right? And so depending on the use case, you can benefit from one or the other. If you're looking for coverage, we would be using the lower band spectrum. If you're looking for capacity, say in a stadium, right? I mean, with the First Energy Stadium, for example, we've got that wired with 5G. That's where we're using the high band spectrum so they can have a ton of capacity and or speed, where you can have thousands of devices all connecting at the same time. So the way we are deploying, and I suspect the others are, is it's based on use cases rather than what we did in the past with 4G, which was just coverage.
Thank you, Sanjay. Here's a question that's for all of you. How do you as providers feel about the municipal and owned operated broadband systems, and how do they interface with 5G? Would you like to touch on that, David?
Yeah. A lot of the municipalities that we work with and cities that we work with, when we're rolling out 5G, we have dedicated teams that go in and can help with any kind of interfacing, businesses, companies, infrastructure, that go out and do a consultative look on that and help you drive and like adoption for 5G. Like Sanjay was talking about the low band and the mid band, as we look at kind of like moving out our spectrum, especially with the merger between the two companies from our side. We're having a lot of a consultative look and having our network teams and our network business development teams go out there and really help with kind of driving the adoption of that and the outlook with different municipalities and helping drive innovation as much as we can.
Thank you. Anyone else want to respond to that?
Yeah, I can pile on that. So what we found, and we sell fiber to all the cities that we can reach, and we found that municipal-owned networks, or government-owned networks as we refer to them, are not a prerequisite to be a smart city. And there's a lot of consultants out there that are trying to encourage cities to use taxpayer dollars to pull fiber on top of fiber and now stand up cellular for private networks. And there are advantages to having a private cellular network versus using Verizon or T-Mobile or AT&T's public macro cellular networks from a privacy and data protection point of view, public safety, for instance. But at the end of the day, cities are not equipped to be telecom operators. And I think what they discovered very quickly is they need the support of an enterprise-grade telecom provider to help them run and operate these networks. Standing them up isn't the hard part. It's operating them and keeping them running. So I think there's a lot of education that goes on as we talk to the municipalities that we serve. And I think it's important that continue. And that's why we've invested in our own smart cities initiative as well, and start, are demonstrating use cases across these different network technologies to show cities how they can better manage their own assets and environments accordingly. But it is a very important conversation and very opportunistic one for all of us to make everyone more aware and more intelligent about how these technologies can benefit them.
Thank you. And I think it relates to a question we have here from Becky Morgan. She says, what are the decisions that are being made now to make sure we don't mess up, that we get 5G off and running? There's already been bumps, there's already been hurdles. Everyone's already talking about this being the first rendition of 5G. What's being done to make sure that we get it done right and get the community, access?
So this is Sanjay. I would argue this is, we're in version 2 or version 3 of 5G at this point, because we started the original deployment back in 2017, 2018. And so we've done a lot of iterations in terms of the technology. And I think Bryan or someone had mentioned, everyone's being extremely aggressive in deploying 5G. So we are learning a lot. The 5G home product from 2 years ago and what we have now are two very different things. So I think the best thing that a community can do with getting 5G deployment is to work with the carriers, work with the companies, and make it easier, not more difficult, to deploy things like fiber, small cells. This stuff it's hard to deploy. It's messy. It takes time. It's not like an app where you can roll it out into the cloud and you can deploy it globally. This is going to take time. And so
Great, thank you. Thank you, Sanjay. We have one more question here that we'll address, and then anyone that we missed will reply back offline, and everyone will get a copy of this presentation today that's online. Can you speak to the challenges, payback, and likely timelines of getting 5G capacity to rural communities in Ohio? Who would like to touch on that?
Yeah, I can speak to that from a cable company's point of view. I think we all recognize the need to serve the unserved. I think COVID taught everybody the importance of internet connectivity. And there was there's many government initiatives to help in this area. And one of them was recently awarded, it's called RDOF. It's a Rural Digital Opportunity Fund, I think it stands for. And the idea is to use that money to deploy network technologies into these, we'll call them white spaces, edging out from where fiber and coax exist today. And certainly you can do that with cellular very effectively. So the idea is to trench as far as it makes sense financially, and then at that point you add cellular networks and you can go another, maybe 20, 40 miles beyond, depending on what spectrum bands you're using to serve those white spaces. So, there's a term called fixed wireless access you'll hear as you're reaching out into these communities. And if you think about what businesses are in these more rural areas, many of them are commercial farms. And as David has been talking about, there's a great opportunity to go from wired to cellular, point to multi-point using additional sensor technologies in these farms. So it's really exciting for us. We all think of it as expanding our addressable customer opportunities, at the same time fulfilling the demand and the need of those communities.
Great. Thank you, Bryan. Bill, do you have any closing comments for our group today?
I do. Thank you to the panelists for sharing your expertise and giving us a few things to think about. And for all our attendees, great questions. This is early days, and so getting smart early, watching it evolve, figuring out how these kinds of technologies can be leveraged in our businesses. With many people on the phone from economic development, how does this impact the companies we serve? All critically important. So thank you all for being a part of it and the investment of time in our work in Northeast Ohio.
And thank you to NEO for hosting us.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Have a great day, everybody.
Hope everyone has a great day.